When you hear private army, you probably picture groups like Wagner or Blackwater, kitted out with top-tier gear. And for the most part, you'd be right. Many private military companies are better equipped than national armies because they allow countries to engage in conflicts around the globe without officially declaring war. That's essentially why they exist. But not all private armies are about combat. Some are purely for protection. A famous example is the United States Secret Service, which guards the president. But the head of the White House isn't the only world leader with a private guard. The head of the Catholic Church, the Pope, also uses mercenaries. However, his bodyguards don't call themselves special agents. They don't use high-tech gadgets, and they definitely don't look like killing machines. Most of the time, you'll see them patrolling the Vatican with swords and halberds. Today, they are the smallest and oldest army in the world, and they go by many names: the Pope's Army, the Vatican's Guards, or most famously, the Swiss Guard. Their full, official title is the Pontifical Swiss Guard. Stick around, because their story is fascinating. The first records of the Swiss Guard date back to 1506. Pope Julius II asked Switzerland for 200 men to protect him and the city-state. At the time, this was completely normal. Switzerland was a poor country, but it was famous for its fierce warriors who served as mercenaries all over Europe. It was a common way to earn a living. After their service in the Vatican, mercenaries could choose to stay or move on. Most stayed, because the pay was excellent. After all, they were guarding a man who, in the 16th century, was considered one of the most powerful figures on earth. But back to Pope Julius II. He didn't get the 200 bodyguards he initially asked for. Instead, 150 mercenaries marched from the Swiss canton of Uri to the Vatican. They became the first bodyguards of the Roman Pope and the Vatican itself. So, January 22, 1506, is considered the founding day of the Swiss Guard. That makes it the oldest private security company in the world, at over 500 years old. The history of the Swiss Guard is a testament to their fierce dedication. Their motto is Ac Reiter et Fideliter, or fiercely and faithfully, and they have served the Pope and the Catholic Church with these principles for centuries. The Guard's legendary courage was proven just 21 years after their founding, in 1527. The Holy See was led by Pope Clement VII, a man historians often call one of the most unsuccessful popes. His entire 11-year pontificate was plagued by failures and defeats. Lacking diplomatic skills, he got tangled in political alliances, quarrels, and conspiracies. For example, in the mid-1520s, Clement VII started negotiating with France, Venice, and Milan against the rapidly expanding Habsburg dynasty. Not only did he enter these negotiations, but he also managed to publicly criticize the Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V. To give you an idea of who he was messing with, Charles V's full title was Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, King of Spain, Germany, and Italy, and Archduke of Austria. Predictably, Charles V's army marched on Rome. The event became known as the Sack of Rome, one of the most brutal episodes of murder and looting in the city's history. This was the one and only time the Swiss Guard truly entered into battle. While a small contingent evacuated the Pope to safety through a secret passage, the rest stood their ground against Charles V's massive army. Of the 189 guards present, more than 140 died defending the Vatican. The Pope survived, and 7 months later, he formally recognized Charles V's right to the imperial crown. Since that day in 1527, the Swiss Guards have not participated in any combat. There haven't even been any minor clashes. For them, being responsible for the pontiff's safety is a great privilege and an honor. To earn this privilege, you need more than just physical strength. New candidates are appointed every 2 years, and the selection criteria are incredibly strict. Only unmarried male Swiss citizens between the ages of 19 and 30 are eligible. They must be devout Roman Catholics and have completed basic military training in the Swiss Armed Forces. They also have to be at least 5 feet 8 inches tall and have an impeccable reputation. Despite the immense responsibility, the pay isn't what you'd expect. As of 2016, a guard earns around $1,300 to $1,500 a month. But honestly, they don't need much more. They live in the Vatican, where they receive free room and board, food, insurance, medical care, and paid holidays. It's a job with an extensive benefits package. The salary is more of a formality. The men who join the Swiss Guard aren't in it for the money or a career. For them, it is a sacred duty. They are willing to give their lives for the Pope and follow any order. In reality, the pontiff doesn't give many orders, so their primary job is to guard the Vatican's entrances and the Apostolic Palace. They also accompany the Pope on his international trips. In their free time, they can do as they please, as long as they stay within the Vatican's borders to be ready for any emergency. Guards can get married, but only after serving for at least 3 years, reaching the age of 25, and committing to another 3 years of service. The minimum service period is 26 months. And officially, the Swiss Guard is often called the most colorful army in the world, and it's easy to see why. Their uniform is incredibly bright and has virtually no practical purpose in modern combat. The full dress uniform consists of 154 individual pieces, and the design dates back to 1914. It includes a sword, a halberd, armor, and various embellishments. The full parade armor alone weighs about 8 kilograms. And that's without weapons. Each uniform is custom tailored for the individual guard. Ensuring a perfect fit, the process takes about 30 hours of work. They have several different sets: the gala uniform for special occasions, a daily duty uniform, and a modern, functional training uniform that looks more like standard special forces gear. But the ceremonial outfits are a work of art. Not only are they based on the oldest military uniforms still in use, but they're also undeniably stylish. The guards also wear metal helmets, called morions, topped with colored feathers. The color of the feathers can change depending on the day or the guard's rank. A few years ago, those heavy and comfortable metal helmets were replaced with lighter, more comfortable plastic versions printed on a 3D printer. But their service isn't all parades and pageantry. On May 13, 1981, Pope John Paul II was greeting crowds in St. Peter's Square from his open car. Suddenly, a man from the crowd fired a gun, seriously injuring the pontiff. It happened so fast that no one in the guard saw it coming. To this day, it's unclear how the attacker managed to get a weapon so close to the Pope. He was later identified as a member of a Turkish extremist group. Since that assassination attempt, security measures have been significantly enhanced. While the guards in their colorful uniforms remain the public face of Vatican security, they now work closely with a plainclothes security detail and modern surveillance systems. They receive extensive training in unarmed combat, marksmanship, and crowd control. They are elite soldiers, hiding in plain sight behind centuries of tradition. So, the next time you see a picture of the Vatican, look for the men in the bright blue, red, and orange uniforms. They aren't just ceremonial figures. They are the sworn protectors of the Pope, a living link to a 500-year-old tradition of fierce loyalty and unwavering faith. They are the Swiss Guard. He was detained and thrown behind bars with the sentence eternal. Surprisingly, he didn't even try to appeal it. When Pope John Paul II recovered, the first thing he did was visit his attacker in prison. They had a private conversation, and afterward, the man was released and deported to Turkey. For 20 years, the mystery of who was behind the assassination attempt remained unsolved. From the very beginning, many suspected KGB agents were behind it. And it was a logical assumption. Pope John Paul II had a huge influence on communist Poland and was one of the key figures who helped the Polish people break free from communist rule. It wasn't until the 2000s that an investigation finally confirmed it. Italian authorities discovered that KGB officers were indeed behind the assassination plot. The Pope's security team faced a lot of criticism. They had become complacent. Nobody could imagine that someone would actually try to kill the Pope. The attack was a brutal wake-up call. The Pope was hit by 2 bullets, one in the stomach and the other in his left hand. He was rushed to the hospital for a 5-hour emergency surgery. This was the first time terrorism had ever struck the Vatican. After the Pope was discharged, Vatican security protocols were completely overhauled. The Swiss Guard, once largely a ceremonial unit, was transformed. The focus shifted to protecting the pontiff during his trips and interactions with the public. Their main job became simple: never let anyone get too close. The assassination attempt in 1981 was a turning point. The Swiss Guard finally started carrying firearms, ditching their traditional swords and halberds for modern weapons. Their training courses now included shooting practice and detailed historical case studies. They learned how Kennedy was assassinated, how Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, and most importantly, how to prevent the Pope from suffering the same fate. They meticulously analyzed the mistakes made during the attack on John Paul II. This event also led to the creation of the famous Popemobile, a vehicle with bulletproof glass designed to carry the pontiff through large crowds. It became easier to protect the Pope, but new challenges arose. Even if you can't shoot the Pope, you could still try to overturn the car or throw something at it. So now, the Popemobile is always surrounded by guards on all sides. It might look a bit strange, but it's what's necessary to keep him safe. However, the Pope's safety doesn't just depend on the Swiss Guard, it also depends on the Pope himself. And this is where the current Pope, Francis, becomes a security nightmare. Almost everyone who has worked on his security detail calls him one of the most difficult pontiffs to protect, all because of his openness. Pope Francis often refuses to wear protection or ride in an armored vehicle. Instead, he prefers cars with an open roof, the very kind that John F. Kennedy was in, and the kind Pope John Paul II was in when he was shot. But that's not all. Every pope has a pre-planned route for public events. This makes it safer and allows the security team to be prepared for anything. But Francis loves to deviate from his route, often spontaneously heading into the crowd to greet people. It's his way of showing he's accessible to the faithful. But you don't need me to explain how incredibly dangerous that is. You never know who's in the crowd or what their intentions are. Of course, maybe he's not worried because he knows how tight the broader security is. To get into the line of people waiting to see the Pope, you have to go through a thorough security check, conducted not just by the Swiss Guard but also by other special services. Bringing a weapon, or anything that could be used as one, is practically impossible. That's probably why the Pope feels so at ease. Pope Francis never liked being behind bulletproof glass. On his Popemobile, the glass was removed, turning it into something more like a pickup truck. When he travels, he doesn't want to appear as an inaccessible figure riding in big, expensive cars. He prefers cheap, simple vehicles. For his non-official trips, he often uses a regular Ford Focus, no armor, no special features, just an ordinary car. In 2015, Francis made history by becoming the first pope to speak before the U.S. Congress. But what worried everyone wasn't the historical significance of the event, but the fact that the Pope, in his typical style, ignored all security protocols. He was supposed to travel in an armored car. Instead, he chose a small, ordinary Fiat. The Pope's security and the U.S. Secret Service had to form a protective bubble of armored vehicles around his tiny Fiat to ensure no one could get near him. But his choice of a Fiat had a deeper meaning. On one hand, it was a display of humility and simplicity. On the other hand, we have to remember the Holy See is about politics as well as religion. The choice of car reflected Pope Francis's concern for the environment. His encyclical on climate change and his speeches at the UN were all focused on caring for the planet and the poor. The Vatican likely wanted to avoid the image of the Pope riding in a gas-guzzling vehicle. American media called his actions noble but extremely dangerous. By being so open, he could easily provoke an attack. But in addition to his guards and the Secret Service, there were special forces, police, and K-9 units working to ensure order. With that level of protection, the Pope could probably walk through the streets on foot. His job, as he sees it, is to be with the people, not to constantly worry about being shot. When he's touching people, kissing babies, shaking hands with the elderly, or approaching the sick, he isn't thinking about security. He's simply not concerned with whether he's safe or not. And yet, things can still go wrong. We know of at least 4 instances where security failed and someone managed to get to the Pope. Thankfully, none were fatal. In 2009, during a mass, a woman jumped over a barrier and pulled Pope Benedict down. He wasn't hurt, but he fell. In 2011, a young boy somehow approached the Pope in the middle of a service. The guards didn't stop him, and no one understood how he got there. Another time, during a Pope-mobile procession, a man ran up to the car, grabbed the pontiff's hand, and held on tightly. The guards just watched, and only when the Pope made it clear he couldn't break free did they intervene. So, no matter how much the security teams claim they're ready 24/7, no special service is perfect. Despite these lapses, security at the Vatican today is a massive operation. It's not just about the guards, it's also about modern technology. It's impossible to get into the Holy See unnoticed. Even if you manage to slip past the patrols, you can't evade the surveillance cameras. In fact, the Vatican is one of the most protected places on Earth. Their security methods are so secret that there's almost no public information about them. We know more about how the White House is guarded than we do about the Vatican. The biggest threat to the Pope inside the Vatican today is terrorism. In 2014, ISIS began making threats against the pontiff. Italy declared a nationwide terrorist alert, and the skies over the Vatican were patrolled. All unauthorized drone flights were banned. The government even warned the public about possible attacks on embassies and urged people to avoid large gatherings. Thankfully, no attacks occurred, and the heightened alert was eventually lifted. But the Swiss guards remain vigilant. As they say, they serve the head of the Catholic Church with faith and truth, and are ready to give their lives for him at any moment. As we know, the Swiss Guard has only seen real combat once, back in 1527. And while they haven't had to demonstrate those skills since, let's hope they never have to. Thanks for watching this video to the end. Like, comment, share. And be sure to subscribe to the channel to help it grow. See you next time.